So, Miss Briana, thank you for joining us today. I spent a little time earlier today watching the documentary that was put forth and consuming some content about your backstory. And I had no idea that we had the talent from you and someone that's willing to kind of be able to give back. And I hope to be able to cover some of that. And Miss Lindsay Turner is the one that kind of turned us on to you.
Oh, I love
And
Lindsay.
she's great. She's doing great things. So, hometown Farmville, Louisiana.
That's right.
You're an artist. You're a teacher, a mother, a songwriter, and the president of an amazing nonprofit that we're going to get into a little bit. But upbringing, raised in a musical family. So, talk to me about that. So you were raised in a musical household?
Yes, on my mom's side, it is definitely a generational thing. My great grandmother played multiple instruments. If it had strings, she could play it. And she wrote songs. I actually have like some of her original compositions, and just really interesting to see that, because I was just talking to a friend of mine about that yesterday. I really think it is a gene. The guy that does my nails, he was talking to me about how he had put his sons through piano lessons and vocal lessons for 10 years and they didn't stick with it. And I said, I just really think a lot of the times it has to be something you're born with. And my great grandmother was an amazing songwriter, compositionist, played multiple instruments. My grandfather was an incredible pianist. He actually played for Radio City Music Hall.
Wow.
In his 20s. And my mom is also an artist and a songwriter. Her name's Amanda McDowell. And when I was growing up, she was a Christian country artist. We were actually living in Dallas, Texas. So I say I'm from Farmville, but I was born in Dallas. My grandmother's side, and my grandmother was in Union Parish, from Union Parish. And my grandmother started to show signs of Alzheimer's when I was a kid, and by the time I was 11, it had gotten pretty bad, so we moved from outside of Dallas to Farmville. But in Texas, there was a big Christian country music scene back in the day, and Mom did pretty well as a songwriter. She had a couple of top 10 hits on Christian country radio, and I remember going to award shows with her and stuff, and I think she did have a number one called Daddy Was a Texas Ranger and My Mama Was an Outlaw. And it's a really fun little song. But so I just kind of grew up with that. And
how old were you when y'all moved to Union Parish?
11.
11 years old. Mm-hmm. So life in the small town, you've been able to experience some of big city life in your adult years. But how was it growing up in a small town?
I have always preferred the country to the city. Even when we lived in Garland, which is a suburb of Dallas. But I was always so excited to come to Farmville, to be able to be on the lake. I've always been an outdoorsy. I'm not outdoorsy, like when you look at me, you don't think I'm outdoorsy, but I love the outdoors. I love being outside. I was always outside as a kid, and so I was ecstatic when I found out we were moving to Louisiana. And even though I work in Nashville on a regular basis now, I can tell you that it only takes me about a week being up there. Sometimes I got to stay for longer than that, but I stayed for almost a month this summer, but I'm ready to come back home every time. It's just my personality. I like the small town culture. I like that everybody knows everybody, and yes, it has its drawbacks, but I feel like it gives you, I don't know, a better sense of belonging when everybody is somebody, and I enjoy it. I enjoy it. I love Union Parish, love Farmville. I live in Calhoun now, and we don't have any houses but our neighbors who are our best friends around us, and we live on a horse ranch, and it's great.
When you think about growing up in a small town, what was that like as far as relationships and getting to know people and being able to, just kind of grow up and blossom in a small town?
Well, it was difficult for me because our church, we were very, very integrated with our church. My parents were we were the worship team. Like, my brother played the drums, I played guitar, did background vocals. My mom played guitar, my stepdad played lead guitar. We all know how to play an instrument and sing harmony. And we were going to Farmville First Assembly of God, and back then that church was hopping. I mean, it was, flourishing as some churches do, and it was great for a while. And we were there every time the doors were open, literally. And so those memories are great, and I have some of the best memories from my childhood from church and from small town. I mean, everybody knew everybody, and I just think there's nothing better than that. But also, like, it's sort of bittersweet because, as a lot of successful churches do, the church broke up. There was division, and I didn't understand really what was going on and why everyone was suddenly fighting and why there was division and why everyone was having these falling outs. And I say that I've had to deconstruct and reconstruct from that experience. So it was good and bad, but the church broke up. My parents divorced. My grandmother passed away, and my brother moved to college all in 1 year, and that was
wow, that's a lot.
It was a lot.
How old were you when that happened?
It was 16, and that was
16.
the same year that I was introduced to drugs. So it was.
So a lot hit you at one time.
Oh yeah.
The one thing that kept you grounded and centered was your church going through a lot of problems there. Your family, mom's getting a divorce. Big brother moves off, and was it just a sense of hopelessness?
Passed away too.
Grandmother passed away.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I mean, I didn't have the perfect childhood. Just because we were churchgoers does not mean that everything was great at home. And
I'm glad you brought that up. Too many times we're in the Bible Belt right now, and there's a church every other street corner, it seems like. And just because you're a person of faith doesn't mean you're a perfect person, and doesn't mean that you have the perfect home life. We're sinners, and things are going to happen, some more severe than others, but that kind of stuff does happen. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into too many details about that, but I would say as far as the trauma I went through as a child, it was very common for people who do turn to drugs as a way of relief. Like I walked on eggshells at my home. There was not peace in my house ever, and that I always had this sense of fear of making a mistake and what the consequences were going to be. And I remember I would fall asleep all the time at school. And now that I'm an adult and I have my degree in education, which I did take child psychology classes, I realized that I was clinically depressed, but we didn't talk about depression or mental illness or anything like that at all. I mean, I don't even remember hearing that term. So, I was essentially the perfect candidate for drug addiction, and a lot of people are, and I was with someone who was much older than me, whose father was a very trusted member of the community, and I'd never even smoked marijuana before, tried that. I'd had a couple sneaking the parents' alcohol out of the liquor cabinet. But this person was 26, I was 16, and they gave me methamphetamine and to go. I mean, that's obviously that, and I would say probably heroin or fentanyl. Now that wasn't around when I started using, thank God.
What was it like the first time?
I mean, I just remember I felt amazing, and I hadn't felt good in so long. And I didn't care whether the drugs were bad or not. I just knew they made me feel good, and I wanted to feel good, and I just wanted to keep feeling good. I didn't want to feel any more pain, any more sadness. I didn't want to be depressed anymore, and so.
How long will that feeling last?
Oh, well, here's the thing about drugs is that as soon as you come down, you feel even worse than you did before. So you got to keep going. And I did. I went.
How long do you think it took you from that first time to where you're just like a full-blown addict? You had to have it like all the time.
I never stopped after the first time.
Wow.
Yeah. I was already drinking too, which honestly, alcohol, and this just me speaking personally, I kind of have a lot of different beliefs than what's the status quo for drug and alcohol recovery. But alcohol's not really been my thing, but it was a social thing And, you know, if I didn't have drugs, I would drink. But it wasn't even about what it was. It was about escaping
Right.
from the trauma and the pain and the, I don't know, the just absolute sadness and grief I felt. Like you said, it was a lot in 1 year. And then couple that with a childhood that was not peaceful. And I moved out my senior year. It was just me and my mom at the house, and I moved out, and she honestly let me go. I think she just had enough of me. And I pretty much did whatever I wanted, and, you know, and I hustled to get what I wanted. And
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how did you fund that habit? Because I'm sure the first one was probably free.
Right.
You didn't have to pay for it, but at some point that's going to stop.
Right. You know, you get real creative. But I would say overall with my drug addiction, and this is not something I've ever even admitted, but openly, but I don't mind saying it now. I would be a runner a lot of times for like bigger drug dealers, you know, like not actually a dealer, just someone kind of delivering, taking
Sure.
money. And that helps a lot, but you don't even realize, I mean, I spent so much money on my addiction. It was crazy. I mean, I had let me put it to you this way. I had a full scholarship. I worked all through college, and I still ended up with 60 grand in loan debt.
Wow.
So
Most of that due to the addiction, right?
Oh yeah, most of it
Money, and
went,
that's something
either
else.
got smoked or snorted, and that's just being fully
But
transparent.
in college, though, getting money is so easy. It's almost should be illegal.
It should be illegal. I honestly think it is criminal, them handing these kids these student loans the way they are, and then
even knowing the kid has got
they
a
are
full ride scholar.
predatory.
Yes.
They are predatory. And when you're not even 18 years old, and I was 17 when I started college because I'm a September baby, so I was always young for my class. When you're not even 18 years old, and these people are telling you that they are going to give you thousands of dollars for free,
Yeah.
and you don't have to pay it back till you're grown and get a job. Well, you think, well, I'm going to get a job, because your confidence is much higher than your sense of reality when you're, and I could get on a whole soapbox about that, because I teach high school as well, and your hormones actually, teenagers' hormones actually make them believe that they are better at doing things and smarter than they actually are. So if your child is being a smart aleck, or is being hard to handle, or does not want to listen to you, their hormones, because their hormones are taking a front seat, their logic takes the back seat, and that's just the way it goes. And so you're that young, your brain, we now know, doesn't develop till you're 25 years old.
Right.
And you have a company constantly calling you, sending you letters.
Here's money.
Here's money, pay us back when you're grounded. Or I think a lot of them were like, you can wait 2 years till after you graduate, or if you stay in school. So, hey, why does it matter?
Hey, but what they don't understand is that there's two things that you can never get rid of on bankruptcy. That's taxes, and that's going to be student loan debt. I mean, they talk about.
They don't tell you that.
No, they don't tell you that. And these kids are being promised nowadays that we're going to forgive that debt. And I think at the end of the day, they're going to have a rude awakening coming with it. But it's a major problem. So you've moved out on your own. You're hustling, trying to put yourself through school, which is being paid for, but give you living money and support a drug habit.
Mm-hmm.
At its peak, what do you feel like you were spending daily just to support your habit?
$300 a day.
$300 a day.
Mm-hmm. And this was, 15, 20 years ago now. I'm 39.
Still $300 a day.
$300 a day.
Wow.
I was not actually spending that, because, like I said, I would hustle all the time.
Sure.
And I would steal things too. I mean, you just do whatever it takes.
What happened on your first run-in with the law? Tell me about that. What happened there?
It's actually kind of funny now. It wasn't at the time. So obviously meth is a really hard drug, and it makes you crazy, and it also gives you a sense of false confidence. And I was teeny-tiny, I mean, obviously you see me, I'm not a very big woman, but back then I was even smaller. I was probably maybe
I can't even believe the mugshot that I saw online of you
Yeah,
from back then.
it
That's
was rough.
just shows you what meth can do to a person.
Oh yeah, I mean, that was, let's see, that picture. I was 24 in that picture, so that was 15 years ago.
You look like you were in your 40s. I mean,
I know I look older then than I do now.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
I agree.
Yeah, and most people would, but I mean, it is evil. It completely sucks the life out of you. It leaves you almost like soulless. I genuinely, now I did everything in college. I honestly didn't even do that much meth in college, even though that's what I started with. I did a lot of, pills and um, amphetamines, mostly pills though. We would do coke on the weekends, when we went out to the party and bar, but it was just I was a partier. I partied all the time, and luckily made it through school somehow. I think a lot of that is due to the fact that, like I said, my childhood was so. My house was so tumultuous. There was so much toxicity and drama going on all the time, and so I just am really good at functioning at a high rate of anxiety, and so. And I'm still kind of the same way. Like I don't stop. And I wasn't stopping back then, but I was going down a road that led to death. And so pain pills I was really bad off on pain pills and then whatever else, taking a lot of prescription stuff.
But you're running with the law, the first one.
But my run-in with the law, I didn't really. Like, it was interesting because I started on meth and then I kind of got away with it and was doing like everything else. And I do it once in a while, but I was like, I don't like it. I feel gross when I do meth and it's trashy. But I got back into meth, and that second time it really just grabbed me. And two, when I became an intravenous user, that was the beginning of the end. And it needed to be. So the first time that I got arrested. I actually want to tell you about the second time.
Okay.
Because the first time I was stealing from a store. I was stealing stuff I needed, but the reason I was stealing was because I only had enough money for the Oxycontin that I was planning on buying as soon as I left. And that's very typical. I was living in Georgia at the time. And I stayed a night in jail. The judge made me clean the courthouse, and they, wrote it off. But I came back to Louisiana after I was bounced around everywhere. I say it in my song, If These Boots Could Talk. I lived in Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina. I moved back down to Florida. I got arrested again. For shoplifting, and I didn't have a license and insurance and all this stuff. My mom had to come get me. She made me go to a rehab. Rehab honestly made everything worse. That's just my experience. I know it works for a lot of people. I got just introduced to harder drugs and worse ways to do it.
But wouldn't you think that it depends on the place that you go? If something is run
Yes.
really, really well at a high level,
Yeah.
you probably would have had a different experience.
Yes. I think that, I went to a state facility, but I also think it has to do with you being ready. And I just say all that to say that, like, it would be like arrested, rehab, halfway house, arrested, rehab, halfway house, and jail, rehab, halfway house. That went on for a couple of years. But the first time I got arrested in Louisiana, I was at Walmart. I was stealing CDs that I was planning on pawning later. I had been up for days, I'm sure, and I'd been using meth and taking pills, and obviously not in my right mind at all. And a woman was following me, and she worked for security at Walmart, and it was the one in Western Road. And I didn't know it, and as soon as I walked out, which this was something I did on a pretty regular basis, in my mind it was justified because I was like, they have insurance to cover that, and who's it going to hurt, But I walked out, and she was like, hey, stop right there. We know you've been stealing. She was yelling at me. Well, I just took off running. I just started running as fast as I could. Well, unfortunately, because I was high out of my mind, I couldn't remember where my car was. So I was just running in zigzags all over the parking lot. And by this time, the police were there, and there was like 4 cop cars there. And every time I looked up, I felt like I saw another cop. They were just, honing in on me from every corner. And, everything that I've ever done, I just own. I'm like, yeah, that happened and it was crazy, but it made me who I am. But this one in particular was really crazy because I just was like, as long as I keep running, there's no way they're going to catch me, which I know is not logical. But this cop jumped out in front of me and he had his gun out and he goes, stop where you are. And I didn't. And it was literally all sides at this point. And he goes, I said stop. So I did stop. And he said, put your hands up. And I was like, no. He said, you're not taking me. I was yelling back at him. It just stunned me because obviously I felt like a caged, rat or something.
Sure.
He ran up to me and he judo kicked me in the chest so hard. He went, good cow, right here in the center of my chest. I flew back, landed flat on my back. And you would think that I would have at least just said, okay, like, cuff me now. But no, I popped right back up and started mouthing off to him like, oh, does that make you feel good? You feel like a man now? You just drop kicked a 100-pound girl.
What if they had dash cams back then?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad they didn't. But anyway, as I was mouthing off, they cuffed me and took me in, and that was most of the time. It was just like I either got pulled over, and once they have your number, especially talk about small towns in Louisiana, once they know that you're a drug user and you're involved in that circle, in that scene, and once you get arrested the first time, it's gonna happen again unless you straighten up, period. Your 3 options are jail, rehab, or death. Like, those are your options.
When you were talking about your mom picked you up and carried you to rehab, from the time you left the house till that occurred, did your mom know you were struggling with drugs?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Has she tried to intervene at any point? I'm sure you would be resistant to anything family would have done.
Well, she picked me. She basically, my dad was living in Florida, but he called my mom and he was like, I'm done. Like, I'm not helping her. I'm not, And I called my mom and I was crying and upset and everything. And that was the whole deal, was like, I'll come get you, but you're not coming home. You're going to rehab. And, I agreed to it, which obviously she was doing what she felt was right. But making someone do that, it's hard to get to a level where you really want to change because that you're only there because you have to be. Forcing someone to go to a halfway house or a rehab when they had no intention of quitting and they're only doing it because they know it's a punishment, and if they don't, they'll do actual real time. It's honestly just not a healthy mindset to have, to be sober and to live a productive life. Like,
so then what do you think the answer is? Because I know the nonprofit that you have is to help support people like this, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But what is the answer? Now, my experience is nowhere near the level that you've seen and been a part of. But I can see where you're saying if you're forcing someone to go into it, if they do have sobriety, it's very paper thin because it seems like those people
doesn't come from the inside out.
Yeah, it's like one thing happens, a relationship breakup, or you see something that really affects you mentally. It's like you just jump right back into it. There's there's no barrier for it.
And also your body craves it. That's one thing that people don't want to acknowledge. Like, especially with opiates, it is so physiologically addicting, and all drugs are. But you get sick if you don't have them. And so even though you might be sober and you might have been clean for a while, your body is still, it takes forever to get rid of that feeling. I still have dreams about drugs. Not that I crave them anymore, but I still dream about using. And now I've been off drugs longer than I was on them, by like, what,
But you
almost
still know
twice
the
as long.
feeling that it gave you.
Right. I
During
mean,
that
that's how
time.
powerful they are. But I think the answer is I think we put too much of an emphasis on sobriety and not nearly as much as an emphasis on self-worth as we should. Because honestly, sobriety, in my opinion, is secondary to self-worth.
Wow, I've never heard it put that way before, but that's
We definitely, Hope on the Inside is our nonprofit, and I am founder and president. And right now we give free concerts for inmates, and I go and share my story. And anybody who has a story, you don't have to have a story about going to jail. Just share your story, just share your heart. And I always encourage artists and songwriters that come with us to do that. But I mean, our bigger mission is to essentially revolutionize the rehabilitation system, because I do have ideas that have never really been talked about or discussed before.
But I mean, you hit something that's, I mean, way bigger than I ever thought about. Self-worth, not just with drugs, just mental health
In general,
in
right.
general. Now that you mention it, it controls so much of what we do and the decisions we make on a daily basis.
Drug addiction is a disease, but it's actually a symptom of the lack of self-worth.
Wow.
So really, the key is healing your self-worth, and the key is finding out what you are worth and making a vision for yourself and who you're going to be and what you want to do with your life, and seeing it as an actual possibility. That's the key. Sobriety is not the key, because you can be sober all you want to, but if you don't have a really good foundation of self-worth,
and that's what I was going to say.
it's not
like
going to amount to anything.
you have to have that foundation, and
Right.
I've just never really thought of it like that. Bring us up to the point to where you got arrested and you had to do some real time.
Yeah, so I got arrested 7 times altogether. Like I said, bad cycle, jail, rehab, halfway house, and back on the streets for a couple weeks, go right back. But, I had not completed a halfway house program that I was forced to go to, and it honestly was, and this is another thing that kind of sets our program, and we call it Hope on the Inside, HODI for short, but sets it apart. I was in like sort of every caveat facet of the system at one point or another. I was in a state mandated halfway house rehab. I was in, like group counseling. I was in jail. I was in prison, and multiple times. And the halfway house was essentially, in my opinion, barbaric in a lot of ways. They were a Christian-based halfway house, but they would make the women, work for them for free and run a consignment store, and they would not provide us with the proper hygiene, like, for instance, gloves to go through used people's clothing. We couldn't chew gum. We couldn't eat anything with sugar. We couldn't have coffee. We had to read chapters of the Bible a day and, silent prayer for an hour each morning. And there was no love there at all. And I had grown up in church, and so
There's a process they wanted you to follow. You got to do
Right.
this, and this. Well, you and I both know in our faith that it's not about a process. It's not about you checking a box. It's about a relationship at that point.
Well, it's totally about relationship. And not only that, but the system was completely ran off of fear. The women were following the rules of the system because they were afraid of going back to jail. And I told the directors that is the very thing. I said, this place is being ran off fear. These women are doing what you want because they're afraid of you, afraid of what you'll do. I said, and the Bible says God is love, and love can't live where fear is. So I don't think God's anywhere here. And they didn't like me very much. And they were like always watching me after that.
The truth hurts,
And
but it still doesn't mean it's not true.
it most certainly wasn't. I didn't feel anything but oppression and fear in that place. And I walked out of my own volition after I picked up a very soiled pair of underwear, and I ran to the bathroom to wash my hands, but I didn't ask permission to go to the bathroom first. And they told me I was going to have to wear a mask for the rest of the week and take a vow of silence. And I told them where they could shove it. I wish I was making this up. But I mean, the thing is, that was state mandated. And the court system doesn't even, because there's programs like that out there just willing to take these addicts in, they don't like do any research or homework of what's actually going on in these types of places. And there was a lot of abuse of power going on, and they were, essentially getting free labor out of us, running their entire business out of the church, but then saying it was a program for sobriety. And it was just, there were so many things wrong. And what I want to do is just not, eventually, and I hope on the inside's very new, but I would love if people would not have to go through that. And there just be a completely new system and a new way to view things, because what we're doing right now is not working. It's just not. The epidemic is still here, and people are still hurting, and they're still struggling. So that being said, walking out of that halfway house was my final chance, and the judge booked me, gave me 5 years initially, 5 years in prison. Because Louisiana's prisons were so overcrowded at the time, speaking of it being a problem, there was an 89% recidivism rate. And for those of you who don't know what recidivism is, it's when you are, your chances of going back to jail. 89% recidivism rate. They were overcrowded, so they made a law that said if you have similar charges in different parishes, we're going to run your time concurrent. Mm-hmm. That just simply means, like, you get, if you got 2 years in that parish and 2 years in this parish, boom, it's going to come together. So my sentence dropped from 5 to 3, and then I got time and a half for good time. And,
where'd you have to serve that time at?
Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women.
Where's it located?
It's outside of Baton Rouge.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. In St. Gabriel, Louisiana. Most people don't know where that is, though.
So tell me about that time. Tell me what. I know we can all go to the bad to think about all the stuff that you were exposed to there, and there's not a pretty picture that can be painted really for anybody being incarcerated.
I think there is.
Well, I think there is, but I mean, that for a lot of people, though, I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff that happens. You can learn how to be worse than where you are.
For sure.
But there's also an opportunity for you to make a difference, but you have to want it to be able to make that happen. So share with us some of the good things that came out of you actually having to go and serve some time.
It was very eye-opening for me. And, I think that spending... And I didn't even really do that much prison time compared to a lot of the people I talked to. I was institutionalized in some sort of institution for about 3 years of my life. But still, that's, when I go in there and I talk to lifers, it takes them a little bit longer to put the wall down.
Sure.
But it's very eye-opening. Prison is its own community, its own system. It has its own rules. Each prison is kind of like its own little city, and there's families, that are created.
Sure.
There's partnerships that are created, and I feel like overall it made me, not that I really ever was, but really just see people for people, because you're all on the same playing field. You're all on the same playing field. No one has any more opportunity than anyone else.
Everybody's checking account is at the same balance.
Right. Okay, you might have a nicer sweater and some more ramen noodles to buy on your commissary, but for the most part, there's no competition. Everybody's on the same level. So it was a very great opportunity for me to reckon with other people and myself and just truly see people for who they are, people for people. Because when you're out in the world and you're working a job and there's so much competitiveness and, there's so much keeping up with the Joneses and all that, none of that is there, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, they're all there. And, I I had friends of every color, and we were all from different backgrounds. And, this sounds weird, but I actually had a lot of good memories. And I even will tell anybody that prison saved my life. And the reason is because, I could never finish a rehab program or go to one that was long enough to where I really started to notice a difference in myself. These 30-day programs for someone who was like me, doing hard drugs for years, it changes your brain chemistry, it changes your body chemistry, and it takes a long time for your body to recover from that. Sometimes your body never does. Like when I went to jail, I was very unattractive at that point. Not that I was always, I would say I was a pretty girl growing up, but I had scars in my face, and my teeth had gotten messed up, and, I was bone thin, and I just looked like I hadn't slept in years because I hadn't. And prison forced me to get clean when I couldn't get clean on my own, so that was good. Then prison forced me to look at other people and myself and just really understand who I was and what I could contribute. And it forced me to look in the mirror. And I think isolation can be a really good thing. I have a daughter. She'll be 7 in just a few days, and I love her to death. But she never wants to be by herself. She always wants to play, and she is an only child. And I tell her, like, being by yourself is good. You get some of the best ideas, your most creative moments when you have nothing to do but be alone, just with your own thoughts. And I had plenty of time for that, obviously. And after about 6 months, I really started to feel myself changing and feel my brain sort of reconnecting. Yeah, it took that long. I started remembering things I didn't know I'd forgotten.
When did you pick the music back up?
In there, I started writing songs in prison again. I didn't start playing guitar again. I never pursued music fully because I was always afraid of it. And plus, I could never get my crap together enough because of my addiction to pursue music like I wanted.
As a kid, did you ever look at yourself, or as a teenager, that you wanted to pursue a career in music?
Oh, yeah. Like, I definitely wanted to, but I never thought I was good enough to. I had a lot of voices inside my head and outside telling me I wasn't good enough. So, you tell a kid that, and they're going to believe it. But...
So is prison where you found yourself?
Yes, definitely. We talked about this before the show, but it is not about religion. It's about relationship.
Yep.
And I make it very clear that what we do is not a ministry. We don't do ministry, we do outreach. And the reason for that is because, number one, I don't want to be cornered in a, like, well, this is the segment, the field that you have to
conform to.
This is the rules you have to go by, because, and ministries are great, but I know that that's not my calling. My calling is outreach, and my calling is to tell people to figure out what their spiritual relationship looks like for them. Because I genuinely believe, and this is me, I genuinely believe if you just have a spiritual relationship with a higher power, whichever it may be, based on what someone is telling you it should look like and be like, then it's not real. I feel like it is about as deep as getting a mail order bride for your marriage, because it should be a deep, sincere relationship that you have found and sought out on your own and felt on your own. And it should not be because I'm telling you that this is what you need to change your life. This is what you need to save you. So
how did religion, though, play into you changing your life?
So, I do believe in God, and I do believe that I found the real relationship with him that I needed, not based on what someone was telling me for the first time. Even though, like I said, I grew up in church, we were there every day, I was able to figure out, by spending that time by myself, by spending that time in, some people call it a prayer closet, spending that time alone in meditation, that he had saved me and that there was a reason I was still here. And this was my secret, and I share this gladly everywhere I go when we speak and sing in prisons. So once I found that true spiritual relationship that mattered to me and meant something to me and felt real to me, then I just started looking around at all the times I could have died. I overdosed several times. At all my friends who had died, who hadn't made it out, because when you're in that world, there's going to be people that die, that overdose.
Do you feel like that God had a plan for you?
Oh, 1,000%. And so I just told him, I said, okay, God, you made me and you've saved me, and I could have died, and I know that. And just like dangerous situations too, when you're an addict, you just consistently put yourself in dangerous situations because all you care about is the drug. But
Right.
I said, okay, I don't think I'm worth anything. I don't think I'm good enough. I've never thought I'm good enough, but I think you think that about me. And if you say I'm good enough and you think I'm worthy of being given a second chance, and you see value in my life, then I am only going to go with that. I am not going to go with what I think about myself anymore, because what I think about myself has landed me here. And so anytime I would have those negative thoughts come into my mind, okay, no, but God thinks I'm worthy. He thinks I'm good enough. He loves me. And I would just, they call it self-affirmations now. I didn't even know what that was, but I would just look in the mirror and tell myself, when you get out of here, you're not going to look like an addict, talk like an addict. You are going to be classy. You're going to be presentable. People are going to like you. You're going to be warm. You're going to be successful. You're going to get a good job. People are going to love you. And I just envisioned, I said, okay, if you were God and you created me, what would you want from me? What kind of person would you see me as?
But how much of you have to put the work in to make it happen?
Oh my God. It's so much work.
We can't sit there and
It's
pray
so
and say,
hard, trust
all right,
me.
Jesus, take the wheel.
No,
and
definitely not. I mean,
it's-
that's the beginning step, right? Yeah. The first step is finding your self-worth. But then actually, I'm still finding it. I'm still pursuing that. It never ends. It's an ongoing journey.
If you feel like it has ended, that you have reached the end, that I've got that mastered, please let me know, because I just don't think it's.
I don't think it's possible. I think that's kind of part of living a life with purpose and meaning, is continuing to pursue who you were made to be, who you were created to be.
I watched a short little video. It was you playing acoustic in front of a group of ladies in prison. What was the name of that song?
Let Jesus Drive.
That's it right there. So listen to that song, and I love the acoustic version of it, by the way.
Thanks.
Listen to that song, now that I'm reflecting on it, is about self-worth. It's about, I'm not going to let you affect me anymore, because I'm grounded and I know where I'm at.
Right.
Is that kind of some of the meaning behind that song?
Most certainly. I mean, just worrying about other people's opinions of you is a waste of time. And I'm not going to say sometimes I don't get my feelings hurt.
Sure.
If I hear someone said something negative about me, but not nearly like I used to. Because it's just like, I've been through way too much to let so-and-so or such and such really actually affect my everyday outcomes. It's just not. It's a waste of time, and I don't have time for it. I've got way too much going on. But I definitely am very clear with the men and women, and I, tell them that the real world is much harder, and being a clean, productive citizen in the real world is much harder than being in prison. I don't make any bones about that. I'm like, look, that it's really, it's hard. It's much easier to just go back and give up.
So do you think that there's out of that 89% that you quoted earlier, do you think there's a certain percent that just it's easier if I just go back?
Most of them, yeah. because it's so hard. Like when you get out, they want you to have a job. They want you to meet with your parole officer. They want you to make AA or NA meetings. They want you to pay your fines. And it's like, wait, I don't have a skill set. I don't have a resume. I don't have, I have a record, and then like I don't have a vehicle.
Was there a defining moment when you were in prison that you can relate back to that said, this is the day that I turned things around, that I made that mental shift? Or do you feel like it was a progression of many things going on during that
There's
time?
one, I think it was both. There was definitely a progression, and there still is. There still is a progression of me becoming who I was made to be and me seeking out my higher purpose. But obviously, that was my most transformative years to date. I may have more. Not looking forward to it because it's going to be tough. It's happening right now, actually. But I did have this one time where, I was sitting with my friends and we had a little group, me and a couple other little girls, and we, sing songs and harmonize and stuff. And I did. I went to chapel every night. I don't mean to be like, I'm not anti-Christian or religion at all. I am pro, taking a new approach. I'm pro taking a new approach. And it's not, there are systemic flaws in the old system, and it's not because Christianity is wrong. I love Jesus. It's because of a belief system where, again, you're just concentrating on the wrong things, and it's no one's fault, but just what it has become versus what I see it being are two completely different things. Anyway, sorry, I keep getting off track. So this moment, we were in chapel. We go to chapel every night. I mean, there really wasn't anything else to do, and I liked going to chapel. And at LCIW, they had it every night. You could go if you wanted, and just about. And this couple was there, singing and talking, and kind of like I do now. And I hadn't played the guitar in years, and my friend Tatiana, called her Tati, she stood up and she embarrassed the fire out of me. She was like, y'all ought to let her sing. She can really sing. And I was like, sit down, She's like, no, I'm serious. She's great. She can really sing. And so the people who knew I could sing, all the girls started clapping and cheering for me. And they let me come up on stage with the prodding of some of the girls in the crowd. And I sang a Christian song that I had written when I was about 12 years old. It goes, speak to me. I'll sing a little bit. My voice is most definitely not warmed up, but it's like, and I'm staying here until I'm made to move, till the whole world turns against me, and all I see is you. And I'm standing here, but I'm falling on my knees as I listen for your voice, and I tell you my needs. And what tomorrow brings doesn't matter anymore. Speak to me, Lord. And I sang that whole song, and I had my eyes closed the whole time. And when I opened my eyes, everybody was just like on their feet, clapping and cheering, and it was just such a cool moment. And I just remember thinking like, wow, like I really did something that mattered and touched people. And I'm still trying to do that, and I love doing that. So, I try to do it with teaching. I try to do it with Hope on the Inside. I do it when I go play, because I feel like from my experiences, the best way to handle depression is to do something good for somebody else. I feel like that's what we were made for.
When you were leading up to your time to get out, I'm sure it just didn't happen. Oh, it's time to go today. There was probably a little lead up to it. You knew that there was probably a little bit of a countdown, right?
Well, when I was getting
released.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what were you doing during that time? Because I would have to assume, based on your history, you're probably had some anxiety over it.
Oh yeah, it's a
Not
really
know
angsty period.
what am I going to do? Who's going to be able to help me? Because now you're just thrown back out into the world and say, go be good this time. What did you do to set yourself up for a path for success when you got out, to keep from going back to what you were known for?
I faked it till I made it. And I say that like it sounds so simple, but
It's hard.
it's very hard. I mean, even to this day, there's a lot of days where I don't love myself. Self-love is a really difficult thing. But, you know, I tell the inmates, I'm like, you know, I said, okay, who here believes in a higher power? They all raise their hands. Who loves their higher power? They all raise their hands. I'm like, okay, well, how does it make sense that you believe in, who thinks their higher power created them? They all raise their hands. And I say, well, how does it make sense that you believe that there's a higher power that loves you and created you, but yet you don't think you're worth anything better than
Right.
these four walls and being behind bars? Don't you think you're doing a disservice to the higher power that you claim you believe in and that loves you? That's not what you were created for. And so I didn't really have a plan except to try to follow him and my heart and look for the doors that were open to me. And then also the hard work is on the days you don't feel like doing it, you know, getting up, dressing up, showing up, no matter what. I love that quote. And wearing a smile and trying to be a light, because, you know, you're going to reciprocate your whatever energy is being put out from you is going to be
Walk in a room
reciprocated.
with an attitude, you're going to get attitude.
Right.
You
Or
walk
walk-
in with a
walk-
smile, you're going to most likely be greeted with a smile.
Or walk in with a feeling of, I'm probably not going to get this, or a feeling of this is a stupid idea or a bad idea. It may be, but don't act like it is.
Right.
You know, and I've been told no a lot more than I've been told yes in my life, trust me.
But you would never gotten to that yes if you hadn't heard those no's in the process.
That's right.
The the most impactful thing to me watching your documentary, in which I mean I encourage everybody. You know, we're kind of covering some high points here, but you really dive into some details. One of the things I want to bring up, and it's like I may need to have a box of Kleenexes up here, because redemption. And that's what I want people to understand coming out of this, is that I don't care where you're at today, there's hope. If you feel hopeless, there's hope. There's people that are willing to invest in your life, but you've got to take the first step. When in that documentary, you start talking about the superintendent, that I don't know how your relationship formed with him. I'm assuming it's a him during that time, but for him to make the offer to you to become a teacher, and you're sitting back in your mind thinking, well, I've got this record that's not going to let me be that. And you tell him anyway. And after he collected himself, he's like, well, let's do it anyway.
Well, and that was Danny Bell, and I actually just saw Mr. Bell at a Bearcat Ruston High football game last Friday night, and it was so good to see him. But yeah, he I was working as a reporter. I went in with a smile on my face, and one thing I always preach to is don't take no for an answer. And just because someone tells you no doesn't mean the next person is going to tell you no. Like, don't, you know, if you walk around defeated, you're defeated. But Danny Bell, I had gotten a job as a reporter. I was working in Union and Lincoln parishes for the Gazette and the Ruston Daily Leader. And I also had gotten a part-time job teaching Spanish at Union Christian Academy. I've always just like worked my butt off, and you have to in this economy. You have to when you have something to prove, which you obviously do have something to prove more than most people when you have a record. But yeah, when a teaching job had come open at Shoe Trent, and he told me I should apply for it, and I just was like, I don't think that's a good idea. He said, well, why not? And I said, well, Mr. Bell, you know, never told you this, but you know, I've got 7 felonies on my record, and I don't even think I'm allowed to be around kids. And he did. He sat back for a minute, and you could kind of see him taking it in, and he said, well, I think you ought to do it anyway. And I'm like, how? And there's been so many instances in my life where, it's a how, but if you just trust God and you keep
Forward.
pushing forward, you'll see it. And when you look behind you, you go, "Oh my gosh, that was crazy." But just like with the nonprofit now, that it's a how. It's a, how is this working? How am I going to make this happen? And it's gotten so much success so early on, and it's been crazy. And I feel like I am building an airplane that's already in the air, flying. That's what I feel like. But it's like,
So that's not a
it's
bad. That's
working.
not a bad feeling. A little bit out of control, but you're
Yeah.
seeing progress that's
Right.
being made. So how were you able to get your teaching?
Well, Mr. Bill, told me that I could get an alternative certification. He said, you can go back to school, get your master's, get on the alternative certification. He's like, and they won't do a background check till you graduate from school. So you got that much time to figure it out. And at first, I'm like, ugh, I don't know about that, But I prayed about it, and I did feel in my heart that it was what I should do. And so I took the job. I enrolled in school to get my master's. And you have to be in the program. Like in Louisiana, in most states are this way now. You have to have a teaching degree, or if you don't have a teaching degree, you have to at least be enrolled in school pursuing a teaching
Right.
degree to be a certified. That's the alternative certification, is to be enrolled in school. So I went back to school, started the program, and made a lot of mistakes. It's not like I just, in that moment, or, in prison, my self-esteem and self-worth was perfect. I still really struggle with it to this day. And I think that's just the human in us. But I made, my first year teaching was really hard. I did some dumb stuff, and I just felt like, man, should I have even done this? Like, I'm in over my head. And people were really ugly to me, honestly. I had a parent print out 8x10 copies of my mugshot and pass my mugshot out at a basketball game at the school I was teaching at, and that really, really hurt. It was really hard for me to show my face and keep doing what I was doing, but I did, because I couldn't turn back. But I went through the master's program, and I kept teaching, and I took 3 years because, I had Bristol, and there was just a lot going on. But time came for me to graduate, and I'm like, okay, this is it. And I sent my application in, and I got a letter back from the state, and they denied me. And I was frustrated, but I was like, it's okay that they saw your record. It's expected. So wrote an appeal, got a letter back. They denied me again. And then they also told me that I couldn't appeal anymore. And I was so distraught, because I was like, that it's moments like that where your faith really gets shaken. You're like,
Sure.
what the heck? Like, you brought me this far, and then I also acquired so many more student loans getting my master's degree. Right. And now I can't do this. And then I just remember saying to myself, you're not going to stop. You can't stop. You can't accept this. You cannot take no for an answer. And that's the thing, is like, you just have to push that much further. And so I just was like, what can we do? And I thought, well, during my time as a reporter, I met a lot of public officials in office, and they saw how hard I worked. They knew about my background, and I thought, I'm gonna call every public official that I ever interviewed or worked with, and I'm gonna ask them to write letters into the state. And so I wrote another letter and just sent letters from, I had a state senator, 2 superintendents, a state representative, the judge that sentenced me, I think, and the DA as well. And yeah, I sent him in, and I got a letter from the state a couple weeks later, and I was like, just bated breath. But I opened it up, and it said that they wanted me to come to hearing in Baton Rouge. And obviously, I have PTSD from being in court, so
Sure.
I was like, I don't want to go back to court. But it was me in front of the entire State Board of Education, Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, and the superintendent, John White, at the time. And they asked me a couple of questions, and I've never been more nervous in my life. And, like, I don't get nervous, but literally everything was riding on that moment. And I don't even remember what I said or what they said, but I walked out of that building with a piece of paper in my hand. That was my
So did
license.
they vote in front of you?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they voted yay or nay in front of me. They all voted yay.
What was that feeling like when you started hearing yay? Yay.
I felt like, have you ever been so nervous that it feels like you can't move your feet and your heart is sinking into the ground?
And you
That's
really
what
don't
it felt like.
comprehend what's
Yeah,
happening.
no, I couldn't even comprehend it. That's what it felt like. Like I couldn't even be excited because I was just like, oh my
But
gosh.
what did that do for you, for your self-worth at that point, as you're walking out of there, knowing that I was told no, and I was told to stop?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know what? You didn't bring me this far for me to take no for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So you took it to that next level.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're able to walk out with that certificate that says that we're behind you, we support you. What did that do for you mentally?
Well, I was like, it was just a huge relief because I had worked so hard. And honestly, it didn't, I would love to sit here and tell you it did a lot for my self-worth, but it really didn't, because at that point I was like, I had been teaching 3 years. I knew I was a good teacher. I knew I deserved it.
Right.
I knew that I deserved it, and I knew they should give me that. But yes, it was like, so the self-worth was already there is what I'm saying, but it was like thank goodness this is over and I'm finally getting recognition. And that did make me feel good, you know.
So did that affirmation of them saying, you know what, we get it now, did that build any more confidence, or were you already grounded enough in your self-worth that you knew you deserved it, and I don't care what you think about me, but it's nice that you think this way of me?
I honestly, I mean, truly, I don't think it built my confidence because it was just such a stressor for me. But I mean, it was a huge relief. It was a huge relief that I had won that battle, but the battle never ends. And just because I got that doesn't mean that I haven't had issues being hired, believe it or not.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine the hate that can come from
oh my gosh,
others.
I've had people be so ugly to me. It's crazy.
I can imagine. And it's sad that we live in a world to where people feel, especially with social media, that, you know, you can be a keyboard warrior and be so hateful towards somebody. All right, so we're certified teacher.
Mm-hmm.
When did the music career start taking off?
Well, you know, sometimes I hear a still small voice, and I don't. It's not audible or anything, but I know when it's God versus me. And I just woke up one morning and I was like, 34. Yeah, 33 or 34. And I just was weeping. And I just heard, like, if you don't do something with your music, you will regret it the rest of your life. And I was just bawling, crying. And I was like, I don't know how to start, where to go, what to do. I don't know anyone who really does it professionally. Yeah, I could play around here, but I mean, and not that I don't love it here, but to be in the music scene, to really do something with music, you have to go to Nashville. If not Nashville, then LA, possibly Austin, but really Nashville is the Mecca for music.
And your daughter was how old at this point?
She was a baby. She was a year and a half probably. And
so wait a minute. So you're going to school? You're trying to get
I
this?
graduated when I was pregnant.
Okay.
So I was 6 months pregnant when I graduated with my master's. But yeah, I was pregnant when all that was going on, by the way. Fun fact.
Wow. So what was your entry into Nashville? How did that start?
So I had just sort of divulged to some friends that I wanted to be a professional songwriter, but I just had no idea how. And they knew that I sang and played, and I'd play at little, you know, like pubs and grills or whatever around here. And an acquaintance, a girl who was a friend of a friend, told me, I know this girl who's a Nashville songwriter. And I was like, really? And she goes, yeah, like her and some of her family and like her cousins like played for a bunch of famous people. And she goes up there all the time. I said, well, what's her name? She said, Christina McCormick. And very long story short, her nickname is Sissy, but Sissy is one of my best friends and we have remained close. But her cousin, Josh Matheny, is an amazing studio musician, dobro player, songwriter. He's, and they're from Magnolia. And Sissy introduced me to him, and he's kind of started showing me the ropes and mentoring me a little bit. I started going up there. I did a little 3-song mini EP, and it's on Spotify. I think I did, Fall In. There's a song called Nashville on there, and then I don't even remember the other one right now. Meltdown, maybe? But just 3, and that's all I could afford. And he got a great group of musicians for me, and Nashville is just such a community-oriented town. Like, there's Nashville, the city, and it is a big city. But then I say there's also Music City, which is all of the musicians, and that is actually a small town. Everybody knows everybody, and it didn't even take me long. I mean, I'm obviously not shy. I can make friends pretty easily, and I was writing with some, pretty good songwriters, and around that same time, I had an old college friend of mine Facebook me. Like, I mean, I hadn't even gone to Nashville yet. I was planning on it. I had an old college friend of mine Facebook me and said, how did he put it? It was so funny. Something about, yo, Bree, like, I got a hookup for you. I got somebody famous you should meet. Well, this is on Facebook, and I texted him. I hadn't talked to him in years, and I was like, Bryce, I think your Facebook is like, what is it when somebody breaks into your account?
Somebody's hacking you?
Yeah, I think your Facebook's getting hacked. And he was like, what are you talking about? I was like, I got this weird message from you about a famous hookup or something. Somebody famous you want to hook me up with? He said, no, bro, that was me. He's from South Louisiana. That was me, bro. He's like, I'm serious. I was like, okay, who is this famous hookup? And he goes, Keith Brooks.
Wow.
And it took me a second because I was like, the name took me a second to even register. I was like, Keith Brooks. Oh, Brooks and Dunn, Keith Brooks. He's like, yeah, bro. He's like, he's awesome. He would love you. You need to send him your music. And I'm like, that man doesn't even know I'm alive. And he was like, no, he's real cool. I hunt with his cousin. Like, he's so nice, Bree. He would love you. You need to send him his songs. Well, very long story short, it took him 6 months to talk me into doing this. Because I was like, he wanted me to call him. I'm like, I'm not going to call him. That's so weird. He's going to think I'm a stalker or something. And he would just check. And I said, I don't have good enough music. I'm going to Nashville. Like, I don't want to send him anything I've recorded here. And he texted me, your song's done yet? You want to reach out to him?
He's
what do
being
you think about
persistent with you.
He's very persistent for 6 months. I mean, I would say...
And you didn't have much connection with him prior to this?
He was my friend in college, but I hadn't talked to him in like a decade.
So, by chance, Facebook, call me, got somebody?
I would say once every couple weeks, he
Wow.
would text me or message me and ask if I had reached out to Kix yet. And I was like, I'll do it if you leave me alone. That's what I was really thinking. Because, again, in my mind, I was like, there's absolutely no way that I'm going to hear from him. And I didn't even know that he owned Arrington Vineyard and that he ran the American Country Countdown. I just knew about half of Brooks and Dunn. And I'm like, there's absolutely no way. Like, they're legends. They're literally legends. And so he kept on. And I was like, Bryce, I'm not. And by the way, he hunted with Kix's cousin down here in Louisiana. Y'all, everybody knows Kix is from here. So I said, give me his email address. I'll send him some stuff, whatever, And I did, and I told him just a little bit about my story. I mean, I kept it as short as I possibly could. And just said, I'm reaching out, I know you're from here, and it'd be great to have a friend from home. You know, and if you say no, you wouldn't be the first person. I've got, and I think I said something like, I've got felonies on my record, but I'm a teacher now, and trust me, I've been told no a lot, and I'll keep trying because I really love music, and thanks for your time. And was definitely not expecting to hear back at all, and I had actually forgotten I'd even sent it. And then like 2 weeks later, it was after Christmas break. I was back at school. I was going through my emails and just deleting my junk mail, which I have a ton of. And as a musician or aspiring artist, especially as a female, you get a lot of
Yeah.
weirdos that just like, oh, I want to produce you, or
Sure.
like, I own a management company, and there's a lot of predators out there. So I see something from someone named Leon is the name and the address. I'm like, oh, Leon, who is Leon? And I go to delete it, but just like, I mean, I'm a pretty quick reader, and just the corner of my eye read, I'm sorry, I'm just now getting back to you. I've been at the farm. And I'm like, that's a weird intro for someone who wants to produce or manage me or whatever. So I kept reading it, and it was like, I listen to your music. I think it sounds great. You definitely have an interesting story. And it was like, and then, I don't know how much. I mean, it was like 5 paragraphs of Leon, and I still hadn't figured it out, like telling me that he'd been at the farm. He's sorry, he's just not getting back to me. He liked my stuff. Nashville's a tough town, and this is what I did, and I think if you're going to be serious about this, that, and the other, and like advice. And I'm like, what? And then it still didn't even said Kicks. It just said later, comma, KB. And I'm like,
Who is this?
and I finally put it together. I'm like, is his name Leon? And I Googled it, and sure enough, Leon
Leon.
Eric Brooks the third is his name. His son is the fourth. But I was like, wow, I can't believe he messaged me back. So I like played it cool, and I like waited a week, I think. But then we started emailing each other, and he started, if there was opportunities, he would try to get me on like just different little things around town. And so it started out as a mentor thing, and I was making another record by then at Sound Kitchen, and and then that turned into writing together, and then that
How were you funding? Because I can imagine this is really expensive.
super. Well, I mean, no,
Is it
I was
just the
self-funding. I was
hustler in you
self-funding.
just making it happen?
And I'm not the type of person that would go for broke, because if I were to do that, I'd quit teaching. But I'm obviously just not that way. But I've usually, I can't even remember a time where there was more than maybe a couple months where I didn't have more than one job. Like even back when I was a hustler, I'm a worker bee, and yeah, it was self-funded, but we started writing together, and then I started writing with some of his friends, and we became friends. His friends became my friends. Like, and honestly, and this would take too long, but I had, and everyone does. Everyone, because the music industry, the entertainment industry is so predatory, and I had a lot of bad experiences with people saying they were going to do this and make this, and then essentially just stealing my money.
Right.
But once I got in, there's not a better person than Kix Brooks in Nashville, period. I mean, there's not a better person for philanthropy, for community, for networking, for friendship, for trust. I mean, I now have a trust tree. And
that's important.
Oh my gosh, it's so important. And that was another huge relief for me. It's hard to explain if you don't understand how Nashville works and the music industry. But the fact that so early on, I got in with someone that good, that golden, he truly is a wonderful person. He's the best man I've ever met. I mean, he just has a heart for other people. He's
What year was this that you got connected with him?
This was 4 years ago.
So 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Involved in writing a lot of
It
songs.
was during COVID, so 2020, yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
probably difficult, but
Mm-hmm.
y'all written a lot of songs.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where your passion is, more the writing, or do you want to? Would you prefer to be the front person singing your material?
Well, sometimes I'm not driving this thing, you know. I think I am, and then I get reminded, nope. You might have this idea, but this is my idea. And I feel like, you know, I've learned really quickly, not really quickly. I've learned the hard way, but now I see it quickly because of how many times I have tried to walk through closed doors and then tried to force that door open. That I feel very strongly that if it's a God thing and if it's something that's meant to be, the door opens easily. Now, it may be really hard work.
Yes.
It's going to be really hard work.
If
It's
it's
going to
worth
test you in
having,
every way.
If
Exactly.
it's worth having, it's going to be hard.
But at the same time, the door is clear. The way is clear. And songwriting, I've had some success as a songwriter, like not commercial success, but as far as, now I actually make money if I play somewhere, and now I actually write with hit songwriters, and I have a repertoire and everything, and that's really nice because it's difficult. I'm telling you, what happened to me was great, and a lot of it is because of my tenacity and determination, and then a lot of it was grace too. I think I've had a healthy mix of both, but I also think that I seek that out. And
so would it be safe to say that you have to be purposeful? You can't if you sit back and try to let life happen, you're going to get whatever life is going to throw at you.
No, it's just like okay, you need your faith because you have a soul and a spirit, and that needs to be fed. But at the same time, don't think that you're going to pray and it's going to solve all your problems. That doesn't actually happen. Like, the thing with the teaching license, that was the tools that I was born with, that I was created for, being given to me, and me using those tools and me using my brain to come up with another way to make something happen. That wasn't a miracle. That was me working my butt off.
Right. But you use the tools that God gave you to be successful.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think, and again, going back to me just really wanting to kind of do a revolutionary approach to reentry, not just sobriety, because not everybody's on drugs in prison. A lot of times it's, poverty driven or some other sort of issue they're having.
So let's talk about the start of the nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
You and Kix been friends for about 4 years. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not mistaken, the nonprofit started this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all formed it this year.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how that got created. Tell me what your mission statement is for it.
Sure.
And then share with us a little bit of kind of how you see this vision getting laid out.
Well, it's being laid out in front of me, and I'm just doing my best to keep the pieces together. But talk about somebody persistent. There is no one more persistent than Kix Brooks. And kind of like the thing with Bryce, not leaving me alone until I reached out to him. Kix, it was not my idea. The nonprofit was not my idea. I will say that honestly to anyone. It was his idea. I had already been going into prisons and sharing my story and my songs because I enjoyed it, and just speaking for other organizations and performing for other organizations. And he's like, Bree, you should run an organization. You're the real deal. Like, I've seen, now that I go with you, I've seen like other people versus you, and they actually listen to what you have to say. You can see their wheels turning. You can see, their minds changing. I see it on their faces, and nobody could do a better job at this than you with your teaching, with your background, with, addiction and your teaching background and the entertainment and everything. He's like, you should run a nonprofit. You shouldn't be working for other people. And I'm like, yeah, because I just have so much time for that, And same thing. At least once a week he would bring it up for about a year. And I would make excuses. I'm too busy. me and him had already, I mean, started working essentially as a team at this point. Like, we've got so much stuff going on with music. I've got Bristol, my daughter. I've got school. You know, like, when am I going to fit
Right.
this in? And he just wouldn't leave me alone. And I finally started working on the paperwork in October, and reached out to some attorneys. I found I did it online, and I did my research. Obviously, talked to a lot of people and read blogs and everything. But by December, we had our EIN, and I couldn't really work on the nonprofit. But another good friend and mentor, Caleb Sini, he runs Louisiana Med Camps, which is a very successful nonprofit. It's been around for a long time. You know, I got the EIN, and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? Well, I talked Caleb's daughter, and he's like, anything you need, just ask me. So, you know, he told me, well, you know, this is great what you're doing. You know, once you raise X amount of money, you're going to have to get a board together, because you're going to have to be accountable. It can't just be you anymore. And I'm thinking, well, that would be a couple of years from now, you know. So we had 2 fundraisers planned for the summer. I did some little mini tour playing at festivals and stuff this summer, and when we planned 2 fundraisers in Nashville, and I would talk about the nonprofit everywhere I went. And we had raised enough money to get a board of directors by July.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow is right. And I'm like, holy crap, okay. And we just had our first, we didn't even take meeting minutes, because it was, gosh, I mean, it all just happened so fast. But we had our first unofficial board meeting, and you know, people is so important too. Getting good people around you. I think the older I get, the more I realize that too. Like, having the right people and a good team, people that believe in you, is so
Means
key.
everything.
Yeah.
It's the difference of succeeding or failing, having good people around you, and having people around you that are smarter than you in that area.
Yeah.
And you not be intimidated by that. You welcome the knowledge base to come in to help you grow.
I have 8 board members, including myself, and 6 of them have served on more than one board for nonprofits. Make-A-Wish, Boys and Girls Club. There's another one that's like that. That's very well known, and they have plenty of experience. So, and it's a very diverse group, you know, because I would not, right now we are going and we're just sharing, I'm sharing my story. I get other people to share, and we do writers rounds, you know, where songwriters, real songwriters go in and they play, and the inmates love it. They absolutely love it. But eventually I would like to get a curriculum together. The 3 E's, etiquette, education, and exhibition, is the approach I would like to take, which education is obviously super important. If I didn't have my education, if I hadn't been lucky enough to get my education before I went to prison, my life would look a lot different. But etiquette and exhibition etiquette is never touched on, and a lot of these people have never been taught business skills. They've never been taught negotiation skills.
Right.
They don't know how to look someone in the eye and give a warm handshake and a smile. The women don't know to put a napkin in their lap. They don't know how to dress. They don't know how to carry themselves and sit properly and all of that. And like I said, our goal is to not to say, okay, you're sober, now go work at the Waffle House and pay your trailer rent and make sure you never come back here.
Right.
No, it's what's your dream? And if you don't have one, what could it be? What do you see yourself doing? And if you don't have a dream, I say, well, find a gift. Find your gift. Because I think finding your gift leads to your purpose.
And for many people, that's difficult because they're not exposed to the things in life that you have been exposed to. So for many of them, it's hard. Sometimes it just takes a skilled person to sit down and help them self-identify where some of these gifts can actually be.
Exactly.
Where do you feel that within this population that you guys are trying to reach out to, victim mindset comes into place, and how do you address that? Is that an issue that you see? Is that just something that's made up?
it is not something that's made up. A victim mindset is a real thing, and it's a waste of time. If you look at yourself as a victim, by identifying self-worth and purpose, because if you are someone who blames the entire world for what happened to you and you have a victim mentality, you will remain a victim. If you want to remain a victim, go ahead, be my guest.
You'll get the same results.
You will stay in here. But for the ones that don't want to remain a victim and they want to actually do something with their lives and want to live, I mean, really live out loud, those are the people I'm speaking to, And so we don't reach all of them. Some of them, honestly, and this is just the truth, some are unreachable. They have been institutionalized for so long that they just have a curtain, like, a veil.
Sure.
But sometimes we can lift it, and we try our dangest to do everything we can to reach
here's
everyone.
the positive thing that I see out of this. Just like my salvation, Jesus went and died on the cross for my sins so that I can spend eternity with him. And knowing that even if I was the only one that he did it for, he still would do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
For these ladies that you're reaching out to, I completely understand you won't reach them all. But if your nonprofit and the effort you guys are putting in, if you can reach one in that organization, it's still worth it.
And we reach way more than that. I mean, if
you came in, if it's that one.
If it is one, that's right.
It's still worth it. I mean, so I hear you on the sides of working with the ladies and identifying self-worth. Are there any plans within your nonprofit to educate the system?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think the two have to kind of go hand in hand, because we cannot keep just this vicious cycle. You do this, I'm going to do this to you. And we just keep building more and more and more prisons. We're not achieving anything by doing that. We're just warehousing people to be able to warehouse their kids, because when they get out, I mean, they haven't learned anything. And we haven't done our part as a community to address the problems, or some of the problems. We can't fix everything. And I don't expect the government to come in and tell us everything. But man, what we're doing right now is not working. Just like you mentioned with the halfway houses. I mean, it's not the best solution all the time.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. So that is definitely part of our plan and what we're doing right now. So we already have a partnership with the Tennessee Department of Corrections. Frank Strada is the commissioner there. I met with him several times over the summer when I was in Nashville. We did a promotional video together, and it's literally just having discourse with people like that. The only thing I can do and we can do as our board members, as our team, because now it's a team with the same message. Like, we got to be on the page, and when we meet with these people, talk to them. But the only thing you can do is have discourse and open up a conversation about, since I've been on this other side, what I see, could be improved or could be changed, and then how he feels about it. And I mean, he has great ideas. Like, he wants to do classes for felonies, like Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D, instead of, like, when you go to apply for a job, it says, do you have a felony, yes or no? Well, drug possession is a whole lot different than, sexual assault or something, like, or manslaughter or whatever it is. Like, it shouldn't just be a check yes or no box.
Right.
And you shouldn't even have to go into that much detail about it either. There should be classifications, and this is his idea, Frank Strada. That's his idea that he wants to implement, felony A, B, C, D, and so that way the employer knows exactly what type of felony it is, and then can base their decision more on that instead of just, felony, throw it out. And then he wants to do the same thing for sex offenders, and I absolutely love that, because, people have the hardest time with sex offenders when you go into prisons. I really do just see it as now when you get into certain types, no, there is absolutely no forgiveness. But for the most part, when I know someone is in there for a sexual offense, I don't go, ooh, I don't want to help that person. I don't want to talk to that person. That happens. That happens. People tend to just have very little patience and forgiveness for that. But what I say to the people who feel that way is that when people have been in prison for a long time, they are usually a completely different person than they were when they got locked up. And they've probably come to terms with themselves and reckoned with themselves and God. And, if they haven't, you don't know what's on that person's heart or mind. You don't know what happened to that person as a child that made them want to be that way. So, I think it's super important that we do have classifications, and Commissioner Shada loves my ideas. He loves eventually I'd really like to make a curriculum. Exhibition is the 30 I didn't get to, but that's the hardest and the easiest. Exhibition just simply means you are your own exhibit. The way you exhibit yourself and how you exhibit yourself to other people, it makes all the difference. And then we are having a meeting with Governor Landry September 26th, so next week, at the governor's mansion. And I actually have been in touch with the press secretary for Mississippi's Department of Correction and their commissioner, who is actually, what's his name? Burl Kane? He was the warden at Angola for forever. I think it's Burl Kane. He's the commissioner now. So it's happening. We're making those relationships.
Moving way faster than you anticipated.
Way faster. I'm like, could we slow down?
Something, I'll just kind of put it out there about kicks that I noticed watching some of your videos. I'm assuming that it was another prison that you guys were in. It didn't show any inmates. The camera was focused on you, and Kix was there, and another one of the songwriters. Mm-hmm. I don't remember.
Our friend Rafe.
Yes, yes.
He's going to be coming down here soon.
When the three of y'all walk on stage, and I don't know who was in the audience, but Kix starts just pulling on his guitar and just sits back, and you get up and start talking, and the look of confidence and relaxation at the same time that he had in what you were saying in his body language. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've got a mega star that is there on this stage with you, and in no way am I trying to dilute what you have accomplished, but to see somebody like that has gotten behind the vision that you have, mm-hmm. and is mentoring you and pushing you forward, looks like a very winning combination. And
for sure.
I'm excited to see what you guys are going to turn this into. Your story is a story that many people need to hear. There's a lot of people that are in our community around the country that have done bad things, mm-hmm. or things that they're ashamed of, things that they don't think they can come back from. But there's a second chance for all of us. Definitely. But we have to do our part in maintaining that. And for some, it's going to be easier than others. But I love the approach that you guys are taking. If somebody wanted to reach out to you guys for the nonprofit, where can we send them to?
So this is so funny you're asking me this, because we are still trying to get our social medias and all that up and running. We do have Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. My website, you go to Breeze Music, BRIS music.com. There is a tab for Hope on the Inside. Okay. We just built a link tree, which is, mm-hmm. like a small website. I mean, literally, I think 3 days ago, my social media manager messaged me the link to it. And the link tree is on our socials. All you can just Google Hope on the Inside at this point, I'm sure, or just any of the social platforms, Hope on the Inside. We just started a YouTube last week. So this is all very new, but you can go breezemusic.com, Hope on the Inside tab, or just look up Hope on the Inside on any social platform, and there are links to donate, as well as links to email for how to get involved. And our email address is it's funny, I have to look this up. Hold on.
Oh, it's okay.
Because we were like, luckily Hope on the Inside wasn't taken on TikTok,
Wow.
YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. None of it. Hope on the Inside was fine, but Gmail, oh my gosh, we could not get a Gmail address that wasn't taken to save our lives. So what did we come up with? Hold on, I'm looking at this thread with my social media manager now. Here it is. Let's see. I just don't want to say the wrong thing.
Well, we're going to have all of these links posted in
Yes,
our
that'd
show
be great.
notes for you. So we'll make sure the Gmail is there, all the social media.
Found it.
Okay, what is it?
It's bringhopeinside@gmail.com.
Bringhopeinside@gmail.com.
Bringhopeinside@gmail.com. Or like I said, you can look up Hope on the Inside on any media platform or go to breezemusic.com. And thank you so much, Brian, for having me and for supporting me and wanting to know
We
this
consumed
story.
a lot of your time, and I'm just honored that you're willing to give it to us, knowing that you've given a bunch of kids all your time all day long. You've got a beautiful daughter that you're heading home to that you got to still give more time to. And then I'm sure you're still going to be working on this into the wee hours.
Oh, it honestly never stops unless I just put the phone or the computer away.
Well, I'm glad that you put your yes on the table and are willing to do for others. There's not a lot of people out there that's willing to give the time like that. And, you know, for me, for many years, I never had a problem giving my money, but giving my time was always difficult for me. But the older I get, the more I value time and the more I'm willing to give in the right areas of my life. But, I mean, to say yes to something, you have to say no to something else. And that can become difficult, you know, but I guess that's part of being an adult is figuring all that stuff out.
It's so hard. It's so hard, you know, and that's one thing. I just want to prepare these people for the real world, but like give them a healthy dose of hope and expectations.
Sure.
And, you know, again, like there's so much that I see, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to God, and then I'm so grateful for everyone who supported me. I'm grateful to Bryce. I'm obviously super grateful to Kix. And you're right, like it's amazing that he's gotten behind me. But if you knew him as a person, when I say there couldn't be somebody better, I mean he just genuinely he has a heart for people too. It's not. Yes, he believes in my dream. I would say even more than me because he was the one that like kept pushing me to do it. But you know, and speaking of, I do want to say one thing too, because I don't have enough on my plate. We are also trying to bolster the music scene in North Louisiana. We recently hosted the NELA Music Awards. Me, him, and my best friend and ride or die Chancey Neal. She is also a singer-songwriter from here and has had success. A lot of people know who Chancey is, but we did a writers round just like they do in Nashville, which is where songwriters tell their songs and stories at the Dixie. We're going to be doing that again in January, and we're looking at other ways to improve the music scene here at home. Kix loves Louisiana, and when he's not touring, I mean, not that he can be here all the time, but he loves being down here, and he is here. And so just be looking for that because we're going to keep trying to create and host events.
Sounds great. Thanks for giving us the time today, and your story's amazing. And hopefully that we're going to be able just to pierce the heart of a couple of listeners that they want to get involved, whether it be through time, donating their time, or even their funds to help you realize this vision and bring it to the ladies who desperately need it.
Right.
So thanks again.
Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate you.
Thank you for taking the time to watch or listen to this podcast. We really appreciate your involvement. Please leave us a comment, or even better yet, subscribe to this podcast and hit that notification bell so that you can be alerted for every new episode when it hits.